Welcome back. Tonight, the case of Sarasota Middle School teacher John Russo. He is the Brookside Middle School teacher charged with battery for allegedly pushing a student against a wall. The incident taking place the day after Parkland, where 17 students died. Russo was working an after-school track meet when the student approached the field wearing a hoodie. Russo repeatedly asked the student to stop and identify himself. When they refused, a scuffle took place. The incident was caught on video, which has not been made public. Social media is alive with comments and opinions. Was John Russo doing his job, or did he overreact? We don't know. And joining us for more are Bridget Ziegler, the chair of the Sarasota School Board, Pat Gardner, the president of the Sarasota Teachers Association, Kurt Lavarello, executive director of the School Safety Advocacy Council, and joining us by Skype is former Sarasota School Administrator Paul Gallagher. Thank you all for joining us, and we are all at a disadvantage here because we have not seen the video ourselves, and so all we could read is what the authorities are saying and what Mr. Russo is saying. But Bridget, I'll start with you. Just taking us back to that terrible day, the day after Parkland, we are all on edge. Students were told as a matter of policy, don't show up in hoodies because of the sensitivity of concern about somebody else doing something crazy. And it would seem from a big picture point of view that teachers, are told that, keep an eye out, see something, do something.
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, I know we've said this beforehand, specifically to talk about this incident, there's no details that we can because it's under investigation, but post-Parkland and even beyond, especially a day after it, I mean, the sensitivity is definitely there. I think as we go forward and look at school safety and security, I say this a lot, but we all play a role. We need to work together, communicate. There has to be a balance where rules are followed, but you also want to make sure that from an authority standpoint, there's a balance there as well. So,
and Pat, teachers are in a difficult position because you want to ensure to the best that you can safety. On the other hand, there are often conflicts between students and teachers, and teachers, and I know a lot of them, they live in a situation where they could be accused of anything at any time.
Well, I think too, right after that shooting, you had a big worry about copycat shooters coming onto campuses too, so everybody was on edge. But our teachers have been told you don't touch children unless absolutely necessary, other than protecting students. And it seems to me at that point especially, somebody was worried about protecting students. And Mr. Russo, I mean, I can't imagine what else he was thinking other than if this person isn't identifying himself, does he have something hidden somewhere? Are their kids going to be hurt? And he certainly didn't do anything to protect himself.
And Kurt, this is the essential dilemma that our public schools are facing right now in the aftermath of Parkland and all the other school shootings beforehand in terms of what to do in situations like this.
Absolutely. And right after Parkland and these other incidents, things changed. People, staff members, students, everybody's adrenaline's up. People are fearful in their schools and across this country, and here locally we had probably over 1,000 threats just in Florida alone that law enforcement were investigating in schools the following day and in the following week. So, from the onset of this thing, you look at this thing, and that's what you would want a teacher to do, to engage in a situation that could be another threat.
And Paul, you have been an administrator in our local schools. What did you used to tell teachers in terms of what to do when they have a student that may be threatening in some manner?
Well, I think, Alan, first of all, I'd like to say that I feel badly for the pain and for the worry that the teacher is feeling, and also any that the family is feeling. It's a terrible situation. But what I used to tell teachers, and they would tell me in return, would work on it together, what's really happening here? What is happening in education? What is the social and emotional issues? What are the issues of inclusion and diversity? This is not an isolated incident in education. And there are big boy, big girl issues that need to be looked at because of this symptom that was shown to us. And I trust that the school board, and I know the teachers union will, and I know the school leadership will seize this opportunity to take a look at what are the stressors that are coming out here, What are the issues in terms of how kids are coming to us and what they need, and how can we address it educationally in 2018?
Okay, we are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the case of John Russo right after we check the First Alert weather. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the case of John Russo, the Sarasota school teacher charged with battery for confronting a student the day after Parkland. And joining us for more are Bridget Ziegler, the chair of the Sarasota School Board, Pat Gardner, president of the Sarasota Teachers Association, Kurt Lavarello, executive director of the School Safety Advocacy Council, and joining us by Skype is former Sarasota school administrator Paul Gallagher. And Kurt, let me start with you because this is your profession, and I know you're limited because you have not seen the video yourself, but what is the difficulty for a law enforcement officer when investigating a case like this?
Well, you always have to be cognizant, too, of the Florida state statutes contain a victim's right portion of that. So victims in the state of Florida have specific rights, and there's also certain mandates that law enforcement agencies have, the duty to investigate, the duty to bring charges if they feel something like, a criminal act has been done. But you have to factor in that, again, this is right after Parkland, and we have a young man walking onto a campus wearing a hoodie. I think that day it was about 87 degrees. It was a warm day. He's covering his face. He's not showing his hands. So naturally, this is what I would instruct teachers to do, be very, very cognizant of this type of behavior. I train teachers all over the country, and I would want them to look out for exactly what this young man was doing at the time.
But supposedly the videotape, as you said, does not have audio, so you're relying on witnesses saying what happened.
Right, and it's very hard to measure imminent threat in the absence of audio, because you don't know what this young man is communicating to the teacher at that time. That audio portion plays a very important role in determining the threat that was felt or could have been felt by the teacher or the principal afterwards.
Pat, the Teachers Association would be defending and helping a teacher in this situation get legal representation, but you have a community out there which is offering their thoughts and their viewpoints online everywhere, and what are people saying to you, from different perspectives?
I only know what teachers are saying to me, which is, do I have to worry every time I try to protect students that I'm going to be arrested for something? Because I guess the choice was, if Mr. Russo didn't do that and he went, oh, we'll let him go, and the kid walked upstairs and shot 10 people, is Mr. Russo going to jail for that? I mean, I think teachers are saying right now, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. What do you want me to do? You tell me to protect kids. This teacher protected kids, and now he's arrested.
Paul, from the administrator's point of view, how has this changed over time? Maybe if you're looking back years where school shootings did not take place as often as they seem to right now, in terms of how administrators would try to tell teachers how to deal with a student who may be unruly or threatening in some manner?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I think education has gotten more complicated and complex, and what we're supposed to do in formal schooling has gotten a little convoluted. It's unfair to teachers because, as Pat just suggested, what is one supposed to prioritize? The stress they have is just really unbelievable. Kids come to us in such need, in such want, and not always communicating it proper way. And this is happening all over the country. I'm here in Los Angeles working with a school district that is looking to make social and emotional learning, which helps teachers stress, organic, with the community getting together and figuring out initiatives and policies that can be modernized so that school is a safe, joyful place for everyone.
Bridget, we are asking our teachers and administrators to do things a lot different than they used to, where theoretically the role here is to educate. But school boards, school districts are in a situation where what a teacher does and says can be the difference between life and death. So from a policy standpoint, what do you and your colleagues are trying to pass along to school administrators in terms of how to handle situations like
No,
this?
and I think it's a great point, and I think that there's a lot of elements that were said previously, is that now we're seeing that the schools have and teachers have a number of different things far beyond just educating our students that they're dealing with every single day. And we get into this difficult challenge where that's their area of expertise, but they're supposed to be able to be knowledgeable how to de-escalate a situation or various mental health preventative care components. So I think as a policymaker, our job is to work and facilitate supportive services within our agencies so the educators can be educators and that they have that support so that that they can be successful.
And this particular case is happening at a point of time when the school district is coming up with its own police department, and they're not, their responsibilities are going to be pretty wide-ranging in terms of investigating also cases like this with a whole new staff of people.
That's indeed correct. I think there's a lot of different, there's a lot of elements and buckets that need to be addressed so we can better understand what the district, if the continuation of the internal school police force moves forward, what we would be responsible for, what we'd be partnering with our law enforcement agencies. But it raises a very valid question of the complications that exist with this topic.
Kurt, do situations like this happen often in terms of school districts not knowing exactly what to do? You have something that obviously happened. You have probably unhappy parents out there, but you also have a political environment where you want teachers to protect the student population in general.
Yeah, the scenario that played out here is not that uncommon around the country. I think what changes the complexity of this particular case is the timing of it right after a major incident, when we see everybody's anxiety level across the country rise to a level that we typically don't see day in and day out of the school. So the kid who may walk onto a campus on a day that doesn't follow that may not get as much attention as this particular case did, because it's following a massacre that occurred in Florida not too far from this particular school.
Pat, if you're talking about law enforcement, we keep on hearing these anecdotal stories in terms of police with all the attention on shootings around the country. Some police officers saying, you know what, I am going to approach situations differently than I used to because I don't want to be one of those cops who is charged with something. Are you concerned that your teachers are in a similar situation, that something like this happens and they may look the other way because they don't want to get dragged into this like John Russo did?
Well, we've been in that situation for quite a while because our organization has been telling them, don't touch, don't touch, don't touch. And truthfully, I think it's sad because teachers used to hug kids all the time, and now they don't want to hug kids because something's going to happen. But this sort of thing, I mean, we also tell them, but you protect children. And it's still hard to understand. I'm not supposed to touch kids, but I have to protect children. Teachers will still protect children no matter what, if they think something's happening. But to blame a teacher for actually doing what he thinks is right to protect other children, I have a problem with all of this. I really do.
But Paul, there are situations where teachers overreact, and that's what one of the questions are that's before us right now. We don't know exactly what happened here, but things do happen from time to time that shouldn't happen.
This is true in every profession. This is true, I think, with all of us. And you also just gave us the context of post-Parkland. So I'm not saying it's understandable, but the agenda was there for something to happen, and it's not okay, but it's not out of the ordinary. Again, what's presented to us is now what is the work that school leadership, under the auspices of the school board, with help of the community, is going to do about making schools safer. And I don't mean just safety in terms of police protection, and I mean that respectfully. I mean as a safe place to go and be cared for, to learn, and to be successful.
So, Bridget, what does the school board do in terms of a policy situation? You saw in Adam's story that there's some specific language that empowers teachers to make physical contact under certain circumstances. Is the board looking at not just this situation, but in general, to make it even more clear in terms of what situations teachers can act or not?
Well, and I think that going granular on that, I think it goes more to the cultural aspect, because there is absolutely a responsibility for the district and the employees to keep our students safe. That's what they expect when they drop their children off. So a professional educator or any employee of the district should be empowered to do so within those means. And so that's where we get this slippery slope, because it's an innate response to protect those who are around you from a threat. So by way of actual policy changes, I don't know that we'll see that expand. I think reactionary policy is dangerous, but I think there's definitely a cultural element we have to address.
We have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. Stay with us. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. And Paul, I'll start with you. What do you want people to take away from this conversation tonight?
This is not an unusual situation, and Sarasota can show its specialness by having some tough conversation and making this a positive thing, new programs and ways of supporting teachers and students.
All right. And Kurt, there's one thing that we have not talked about tonight, and that's the responsibility of our students.
Absolutely, and I think it's important when we look at these after impact incidents that occur, there's got to be some ownership on this young man, and all young people, they have a responsibility too. And so when he's being told to do something and follow directions, they have an obligation to do that too as part of the equation.
Pat, how would you sum up how your teachers are feeling right now about this case?
I want them to feel like they can protect students without the fear of being arrested, and I'm afraid that's probably not how they feel right now.
And Bridget, if you look at social media, as I mentioned, there's a lot of support for John Russo out there, but I would imagine that the school board is in a pretty delicate situation. Well,
I think just the topic of safety and security is obviously on the priority and the top of mind of everyone, as it should be. But we need to, I think everyone made a very good point. We all need to work together. There has to be accountability. I'm not speaking specifically to this case, but in general, we all play a role. We have to work together. That's the only way to change this culture.
All right, I'll have to leave it there. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about Friday's show on the week in Washington. It was a busy week for the White House. President Trump announced the United States was pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal. The president also announced he would be meeting with Kim Jong-un on June 12th. We went to Facebook for your thoughts, and Carol says President Trump is doing everything in his power with little or no help from our inept Congress to make America great again, and I support his efforts 100%. But George says he seems to get along well with fascist dictators, but alienates our democratically elected allies. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Bridget Ziegler is the chair of the Sarasota School Board. Pat Gardner is the president of the Sarasota Teachers Association. Kurt Lavarello is the executive director of the School Safety Advocacy Council. And joining us by Skype is former Sarasota School Administrator Paul Gallagher.